Hello. Good evening, everyone. Am I audible? Yeah, can you hear me? I can see the names coming. I can see some people joining in, but there are lots more who have to. So, you want me to wait? I presume. Hi. Hi. I'm glad to be with you people today. Thank you, organizers, to let me have an opportunity to come on the virtual lawyer sessions. Although the session today is not on anything related to law, but yes, indirectly there are lots of laws which can be related to the topic that I'm going to take up today. Hi. Hope you can see me and hear me. Can I get any kind of confirmation whether you can hear me or not? Gaurav Sharma. Our topic today is mental health, which is even more important in the current situation that we are all in. We are going through very tough times. We call it the time of the COVID-19 or the coronavirus time. And we've had plenty of lockdowns. In fact, I think this is, in our lifetime, this is the first such situation that we are all facing. The whole world is facing a common situation, and that of going through an infectious disease called coronavirus, or COVID-19 rather. Shall I begin? Okay, I think I should begin, and many people who would like to join in will do so by and by. Good evening to everyone. Hello. And to begin with, I must say that mental health is a very, very important issue which has not been given its due attention for the last many, many years, although few people talk about it today. But on the whole, the kind of attention that it should be given is not being given. Now, we often use words like common words in slang, in any language that youngsters use. You're dumb, you're mad, you're nuts, or you're mental. I'm very depressed today. I'm sad. Nobody says I'm sad. I'm depressed. So these are some words which are used by young people without even realizing what they actually mean. Mental health is a subject which is very close to physical health. We all talk about physical health, and we know that when we have a temperature, we have a cold, we have jaundice, we have typhoid, we've got a whole list of illnesses which we call physical illnesses, and everybody knows we are not well. We've got some tests done. They confirm that we are suffering from this particular disease, and there are certain medicines prescribed for it. Those medicines are prescribed by the doctors, we take them, and then hopefully we all get well. Similarly, in the field of mental studies, we have illnesses which have different names. There is a whole list of illnesses, we call them mental illness, and there is a whole list of them ranging from those which are milder diseases to those which are very, very severe. The milder ones could be considered as maybe anxiety, panic, or which could become severe also depending on the degree. And the more severe ones are those where the person is not in touch with reality too. So there are some which have much more severe symptoms as compared to the ones which have milder symptoms. Just like we have mild symptoms in the case of a common cough or cold, a common cold or a flu, and we have much more severe symptoms when we are suffering from jaundice or typhoid. Similarly, in mental illness also, there is a difference in the degree of symptoms and the kind of symptoms that define the illness. Unfortunately, we do not focus on the mental health of a person. We focus more on the physical health. And for physical health, we always talk about having a good diet, taking medicines whenever required, and we visit a nutritionist, we visit somebody who can guide us as to what kind of foods we should be eating, what kind of food is good. We read a lot about it also. Whereas in the case of mental health, we do not go to a psychiatrist without a reason, and going to a psychiatrist itself is a stigma. Having a mental illness is considered a big stigma in our society. In the Western societies, it's not so much of a stigma. People are more willing, people are more comfortable going to counselors because they get the kind of advice that they want. But in our country, it is still a social stigma, and saying that I have to go to a psychiatrist or I have to go to a counselor means that actually something is wrong with me, severely wrong with me. I'm kind of dimag hil gaya, pagal ho gaye hai. So these kind of situations we have to overcome. Educating ourselves on what mental health is and explaining to ourselves what it means is extremely important. What is mental health? It means our emotional, psychological and social well-being. Emotional, I said that word emotional. It refers to our ability to manage our emotions, our ability to balance out our emotions. I wonder if some of you know, or many of you may be knowing, that we have positive emotions and negative emotions. Positive emotions are joy, happiness, love, and the negative emotions are anger, frustration, jealousy. These are some negative emotions. Now, whenever we experience emotions, there are certain substances which are called hormones which are secreted in the body. When we experience positive emotions, there are those hormones secreted which are healthy for our growth and development, especially in our childhood and our forming years. And when we experience negative emotions, we secrete substances, our body secretes those substances which are unhealthy for our body, and they're not for positive growth. Okay? तो हमारी जो पुरानी एक कहावत होती थी कि खुश रहना चाहिए, and we often tell women who are pregnant, इसको खुश रखो, इसको तकलीफ नहीं होनी चाहिए, इसको तंग मत करो, जो चाहती है ये इसको दो. Why do we say that? Because we want that she should be happy, enjoy the period that she's going through, because those emotions are going to have an impact upon the secretion of certain good hormones in the body, which in turn are going to affect the baby. Okay? So this is how, one example I'm giving you, how positive emotions have a positive impact upon our bodies. And we also say, जो खुश रहते हैं वो तंदुरुस्त रहते हैं, ठीक रहते हैं. जो कुड़ते रहते हैं वो पतले होते हैं. They don't put on weight. These are, of course, not generalizations. I'm not saying it's true for everybody, but these are some observations that people make. One of the bases is that people who are happy, they have hormones which are good for their development and growth of the body, whereas those who are having more negative emotions, they are not. Now, a good balance, it's not possible to always remain happy, always have positive emotions. We are human beings, and human beings react differently to different situations. We human beings are very complex beings, so to understand them requires a lot of understanding. So when we are going through these emotions, we are experiencing something in our bodies too. Remember, the mind and the body is inseparable. There is a big connection between what happens in the mind, the way we think, and the way we are acting or behaving. So the mind and body is definitely closely related to each other. The way we think, our body reacts accordingly. There are people who will have 100 temperature and they will create a ruckus in the house. सारा घर सर पे उठा लेंगे, बुखार हो गया, ये हो गया, मेरा ध्यान रखो. That is the tolerance level of the person. And some people have very good tolerance, where especially women, I would say, they have much better tolerance, where even if they have 101 or 2 temperature, they'll be in the kitchen cooking for their children and their husbands. So what I'm trying to say is that it is also tolerance level of a person, how much can we take in. That is precisely what we mean when we say management of emotions. And we should be able to manage our emotions in a way they do not affect our behavior negatively. And we are able to have good interpersonal skills. This is something that is also called the emotional intelligence or emotional quotient. I'm sure you've heard of this word. Intelligence, IQ is one word which we mean where is intelligence quotient, and the other one is the EQ, which is very, very common these days. Emotional intelligence refers to our ability to have interpersonal relationships and communication with people. And when we are able to manage our emotions, which we are able to do if we have a balanced personality, then in that case we have a very good relationship we can maintain with people. But to maintain the relationship, we also have to kind of train ourselves to manage our emotions. And there are people, these kind of traits which we have in our personalities, which also include being hot-tempered or being calm or being able to manage things well or not being able to manage things well. These are partly coming to us from our genes and partly coming to us from observational learning of people in our families, especially our parents, right? So these emotions, if we can manage our emotions well, I think we can do a good job in maintaining good relationship with people. Now, the ability to manage these is something that we can actually make an attempt to train ourselves for. And it's seen that people who have good EQ or have a good emotional quotient or intelligence, it helps to boost their career. They are more successful in their careers. They have more entrepreneurial potential. They have more leadership talent. They are healthier. They have relationships which are better, and they can actually take in more humor and happiness. And to manage with work stress, this is one of the best ways, to be able to deal with situations, deal with people. And in every work that we are doing, we always dealing with people. Most of us, whatever we are doing, we deal with people. When we are dealing with people, we must have the skills to have the ability to interpersonal interactions with them, to have interpersonal interactions with them. Now, these social, interpersonal or soft skills, there is training for this, and there are coaches who give this kind of training, because this is something we can develop with practice and some training that we can achieve. How to keep our temper under control, how to show empathy and be a good listener. That's extremely important. Today's generation, I find, doesn't have the patience to listen to people. Listening is a skill. It's a very important skill. And even when I talk to my grandchildren or I talk to my children, I find, or the young people around me, I find that many of them don't have the capacity to listen. They like to talk. They like to say what they want to say. But listening is a skill that we all must develop. And that along with that, you will have patience. Because if you have patience, you will be able to listen to somebody. And with adequate training, we can learn this, So we can become more pro-social, we can become more compassionate and altruistic in our nature. So the better emotional quotient helps us at our workplace. It can help us in our homes, having relationship with our families, even in having better marital relationships, and it also decreases the level of cortisol in the body. Cortisol is a substance which is secreted when we are suppressing our anger, we are suppressing our certain fears, and that gets released. So some of the most effective coaching institutes, or I would say that groups, which are techniques which are used for developing the emotional quotient of a person, they use a therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy. And cognitive behavioral therapy is actually treatment in which there is a change in the thought processes which the therapist is trying to bring about in the client. A change in the way of thinking. How can I give you an example about that? Say for instance, two people are talking there, and I have a feeling that they are talking about me. Now that's my thinking. They may not be talking about me, but I perceive it like that. And there's another person who doesn't even bother, who says, let them talk whatever they are doing. I am doing my own work. So, the kind of processing that is happening in the mind, we have to change that thinking process. It is we use that even for people who are dependent on substances, substances like drugs or other substances, and we also use this therapy for them for treatment, in which we are trying to change the way that thinking is happening, so that they are able to think in a different way and give away the substance that they are using. Then we come to another point, that is the psychological well-being of the person. The psychological well-being of a person refers to actually that part of us where we are mentally at ease with ourselves. We have a relationship which is a fruitful relationship, and in the society we are able to do our things well. So when we talk of a mentally healthy person, what do we mean? Good mental health allows people to realize their full potential. Well, practically I think none of us are able to use our full potential, because we never reach that level where our full potential is utilized. But we can learn, we can feel, we can express ourselves, and that is important. Then we can cope with the stresses of life in a comfortable way, in a practical way. The stress of life. And this is where emotional management also comes in. Because, if I come home and there is a crisis in the house, and if I just start getting angry and lashing at people, that doesn't help. What is going to help is my being able to think clearly, and my clarity in thinking will come only when my emotions are under control or they are in a balanced state. So when they are in a balanced state, my thinking is clear and I am able to understand what steps I must take to deal with that crisis, rather than shouting and screaming and blaming on things on other people. That's what we mean when we say management of emotions and coping with stress. Now, the present situation, I'll come to that a little bit later, because the present situation is causing a lot of stress, and that's what we are concerned about. Then, a person who is mentally healthy also is one who can work productively. He can work productively, whatever work he is doing, he is satisfied with it, and there is an output which he sees and that gives him a kind of satisfaction. He can earn for himself and he can look after himself and his family. And of course, if he can make meaningful contributions to the community in which he is living, to the people, to the society, and the way we are working, we are all contributing to the society in some way or the other. Whatever work we are doing, whether you are a lawyer, whether you are a doctor, whether you are a say engineer, whether you are a plumber or an electrician or anybody, we are all teachers. We are all contributing to the society in various ways, and that is what we, as long as we are able to do that work, we call ourselves mentally healthy. Then, which means we can fulfill all the functions that are expected of us and activities that are required for a normal life. And to maintain good relations with others, that is again important, but sometimes relationships become the cause of unhealthy life also. The relationships, the interpersonal connections, sometimes they affect our lives and they contribute to mental health disruption too. That can also happen sometimes. So it's a vice versa situation, which maybe if we are living in a situation where we cannot get along with somebody, then it can give rise to a lot of mental disruption and lead to various kinds of difficult situations. So the balance between life activities, our responsibilities, and the efforts that help us to achieve psychological resilience, that is very important. Psychological resilience refers to our ability to withstand stress, withstand the difficulties and overcome them in the best ways that is possible for us. Now, what are the early signs of a mental illness, a mental problem? Sorry. The early signs of mental illness, little bit of a problem, okay. The early warning signs of a mental problem: too much of eating or very little eating. Both are not good. Sometimes even for physical illness, losing an appetite is not good. Then sleeping too much or not being able to sleep at all, which we call insomnia. These are also early warning signs. Withdrawing from people, not interacting with people, not sitting with them, wanting to be alone, wanting to be left alone, not interacting at all, and disinterested in activities which normally one would do as a regular life pattern. For example, watching the TV, listening to the radio, maybe talking to the children. None of these activities are interesting you. So maybe activities like even prayers, praying to God, that also one at a certain stage one might not want to do that also. So whatever your regular life activities were, there is a sudden change, and not a sudden change, sometimes these changes come over a period of time, and that disinterest can be seen very clearly in the person's behavior. Energy is low, very low, or no energy at all. So the person is either all the time sleeping, wanting to sleep, or the person is inactive in daily life. Another important signal is being totally having apathy, indifference, not bothered about what is happening, whether in the family, with himself or herself. There is no kind of compassion, no kind of empathy, no kind of sympathy for anybody. So it's like you are living a life where you're totally indifferent about your surroundings or people around you. Then one can have unexplained aches and pains in the body. Sometimes they're also psychosomatic illnesses, we call them, because psychologically the person is disturbed, but the symptoms can be physical symptoms. And there could be excessive smoking, excessive alcohol drinking, or taking to certain drugs. These are also warning signs where one needs to be very careful. Too much of smoking cannot be a good sign. Too much of drinking is bad, and all the time thinking of alcohol. Of course, these are issues which can be dealt with in detail, in which I cannot take up in this session at all. Then there is confusion in the mind, there is some amount of forgetfulness, there is anger which is seething within the person, maybe angry with himself, with the society in general, with some people who, targeted people, or it could be the person is very upset or worried about something. There could be a fear, scare of something, which is the present situation, that we are fearful about certain things. And of course, the most severe symptoms could be mood swings, problems in relationships, persistent thoughts or memories. Sometimes the same thoughts keep coming to your mind again and again and again, or the same memories keep coming and you keep repeating them in your mind, and therefore the mind is not actually occupied in anything else but only with these thoughts or memories, which may not be good. Believing in things which are not true, you suddenly start feeling that what I am saying, beliefs, वहम जिसको कहते हैं, something like that. And of course, people also in extreme situations, they think of harming themselves and they may have suicidal thoughts. These are extreme cases, and sometimes I have a little fear also. When I talk of these symptoms, each one of you could think, ये तो मुझे भी होता है, ऐसा तो मेरे को भी फील होता है, कभी कभी होता है, मैं भी सोचती हूँ कभी कभी मुझे भी होता है. But that's not true. We are all living normal lives. So don't get scared. One has to observe other people's behavior to be able to say this. Okay? Then the person overall, if you are in a severely mentally disturbed state, is not able to carry on his daily activities at all, whether it is at work or school or at home. None of the activities they are able to say. Yeah, I think I have some of the questions which I may answer a little later. Now, why do we need to create awareness about mental health? That's very important. To create awareness, what we have to do is to bring down the walls of stigma. Because as I said, mental health issues are stigmatized, and it's not possible for people to go for any professional help without having the fear of stigma. So we have to bring down the walls of stigma by sharing our experiences, our truths, and our stories. More the people share with their friends or other people, the more confidence people will have of going to people for professional, doctors or psychiatrists or counselors for professional help. So people who are suffering from mental disturbances, let them know they are not the only ones. Why we have these associations called self-help groups? We have the Alcoholic Anonymous group, we have the self-help groups for various reasons. And there, these people meet who have common problems. Because if I am having a certain problem in my home, when I talk to my friends will tell me, oh, I have also had this problem. So it gives me some kind of comfort. I am not the only one suffering from it. There are other people also who are suffering from the same kind of problem. Then, now the advantage of awareness, when we become aware, and in our country, really we need to bring this awareness. I always used to tell my students, that psychology is a subject which should be taken up which should be taught in every discipline, in every field of, whatever courses that people are doing. It should be an essential subject because it's important to understand behavior, not only our own behavior, but other people's behavior, to understand human beings and to be better human beings for others also. So the awareness is basically important so that we can intervene at the right time. Early intervention for anybody leads to better recovery. That helps. And of course, it helps to reduce the negative adjectives which we use for such people. Like I said in the beginning, there are negative words which are used, adjectives which we use for these people. And one example I'll tell you is, many years ago, I have worked with substance abusers also, and the word used for people who were taking substances or taking alcohol or whatever, they're called addicts. Today, I mean, today means many years ago now, the WHO decided that addict is a demeaning word and it is better to use a word like dependent. So they are drug dependents, they are not addicts. It gives a little more dignity to the person, and that's what is important. We need to make that person feel that he has some dignity. He's not brought down, from his self-esteem is not brought down, and he's not brought down to a level where he's not even treated as a human being. So these are some of the advantages of really, bringing awareness to people. What can we do to bring about this collective consciousness about mental health? We can talk to people whom we know. To everyone who you know, you must talk about this issue. Open up about your experiences. Encourage kinder, better language so that we respectfully talk about people. And this is something I feel the young people must learn. This is really missing in our present young generation. Then educate yourself. What is mental illness? Read about mental illness. Read about mental health. Educate yourself so that if you are educated, you can impart that to other people also. Volunteer wherever possible to help people who are suffering from that, and of course use social media in the right way. Today social media is being used in a very, very negative way. It creates more panic, it creates more fear than doing anything sensible. We should not sensationalize issues which we read about. People have suffered from them. The media makes a sensation out of it. That's not right. That's not right. We should not be doing that. We should actually be more sensitive to the needs of the family, to the person, to their conditions, and we need to talk about it in a very, very respectful manner. Now, in our times, the corona times, when we are all suffering from this kind of situation where each one of us is scared, I'm going to get it. Why? Because why is this stress coming? It's coming because it is life-threatening, not for all. There is a lot of recovery. As we read in the newspapers and in the media, we come to know that there is more people are recovering rather than deaths. But the number of deaths that are occurring, it gives us that scare, that feeling that I can also be one of them. So the life-threatening situation causes behavioral changes. And there is a stigma attached to it. I know there are people who do not want to reveal that they have had they are infected. They don't want to reveal that. Why they don't want to reveal is because it's a stigma. It's something that they don't want to talk about, which is again harmful for the rest of the society. Then there is the fear of economic instability. Because there are so many jobs which are going away. People are jobless today. There are people whose salaries are being cut. There is so much of fear and anxiety that how are we going to cope with these situations? And it is we who are talking, we are much better off. Think of what has happened to the weakest sections in our society. We've all gone through, we've read so much about it. Who are the weakest sections? They are the vulnerable people. They are the minorities. They are the people who are actually going through something which we can't even imagine. We are the lucky few people who have got who've got comforts in their own homes, and we are still much better off than them. We should actually count our blessings and be thankful to God for it. Then unemployment is going to be a major issue which is coming, and it increases our panic situation. We are in panic. Our behavior becomes erratic. There could be psychosomatic illnesses, somatic problems also. These could lead to more severe physical illnesses also. For example, like the immune system becoming weak. And once the immune system becomes weak, because fear, anxiety, panic, all these reduce our ability, our immune system. And once the immune system is weak, we become more vulnerable to getting the infection. So this kind of situation is inducing fear, worry, anxiety, and concern among us. Anxiety is actually worry of the future, worry for something future, and fear is a reaction to the current events that we are facing. So the risk of mental illness, the stressful life situations, financial problems, or the death of a family member, or even the fear that if I have it, the rest of my family members are going to have it, that itself also causes a lot of problem. Now, there are various ways in which mental illness can come, and there are various factors due to which mental illness comes. But in psychology, it's very difficult to generalize and give statements which everybody can understand and apply on themselves. That's not possible, because human beings are complex and each person is a unique one. Each individual is unique, and their unique circumstances, the unique experiences that each person has, gives a different personality to each one. So we, among us, even among siblings, we have similarities, we have differences, but we are not the same. I am a different individual as compared to my sibling, even if I have 10 siblings or 4 siblings. We are different from each other. And why we are different is partly we can trace it down to our early childhood experiences, which are extremely important. Early childhood experiences are those experiences which shape our personality. And a healthy personality or a balanced personality is one which can withstand the stresses of life and can cope with things much better. And therefore, the chances of that person with a balanced personality, the chances are much less of falling mentally ill rather than a person who has a weak personality. So, the cumulative effect of stress, grief, anxiety, that can have long-term effect upon or consequences upon the family and people in the family. Infectious diseases outbreak can be very scary, which is the present situation that we are going through. The psychological impact can be elevated rates of stress and anxiety. Believe me, quarantine itself is very stressful. Although we have to make an effort to see that we make that into a positive period. Why? Because it affects our usual activities, it affects our routine and livelihoods. It has a negative impact upon that. And what can it lead to? Loneliness. Loneliness will lead to depression, and there could be the harmful effects. If we are quarantining at home, it could affect having more alcohol, more smoking, or some kind of drug abuse. Of course, depends upon the availability, etc. And post-traumatic stress disorder, which means if I have taken it as a trauma, that has happened to me, then after the trauma, one has a lot of stress disorder for a long time. We take other cases besides the virus cases. We can take other cases like child abuse or rape cases or any kind of stuff. As I said, the sensationalization of such issues is very common, but to actually take care of the person and the family is something that we all ignore. COVID-19 pandemic is a potential threat to all of us and to our physical health. The way we respond to this pandemic depends upon the social support that we are getting from our family, the friends that we talk to, financial situation of our family and ourselves, the health and emotional background. I come again to the emotional background of the person and the health of the person. So we are talking of immunity, we are talking of the emotional management. Okay? Okay, I think we'll have to pause a little to come in again. I'll be joining you in a
video tag will be.
Can you hear me? See me? Yeah, I'll continue. So, it also depends on the community in which one is living. Now, the high-risk people, you all know, I think it's the children, the old elderly people, and of course, the workers. something that I must say here is and share with you is that we have all realized that we are nothing without the workers. We are nothing. The plumbers, the electricians, the domestic helps, the MCD Safai Karamcharis. I mean, name it. You have a list of them. Are we able to do anything, any of those things ourselves? So they are the ones who are actually holding the economy of our country, and they are the ones who are suffering maximum at this time. I call them the weaker sections because they are the ones suffering the most. And you know about what has happened to the migrant labor, which has gone because of these reasons only. And there is a lot which can, there are other people also, for example, racial and ethnic minority people, or there are people who do not have access to enough knowledge and information about the illness, about the virus, because in their only primary language they cannot hear it. You see, it's available only in certain languages, and people who have no access to information in their primary language are unable to know what is happening, and they are unable to get enough information to take care of themselves. Okay, and those people who are living in certain group settings, sometimes they also are not able to get enough information. And as I said before, the fear, the anxiety percolates from the top to the bottom. So if there is fear, anxiety in the leadership, in the top echelons of the country, then it percolates down to the lowest level. And that is what has happened when there is mass exodus of people who have gone home not knowing what to do because they have no finances, they are not being paid, they have no jobs, they have no food, they cannot pay rents, and the reason that they have gone home. But they are the worst where psychologically, set aside the physiological conditions, what has happened to them. Psychologically, they are shattered people. And that is why I feel they are the ones who are going to think twice before leaving their homes in villages and coming back to cities to work, because they are really shattered maximum. And in the name of social distancing, we are actually blaming these people for spreading the virus. We don't realize that. But we also can be spreading it, but it's very easy to blame certain groups and saying that these are the people who are spreading the virus, because in the hierarchical setting, we are the ones who are the better ones, and therefore we always put the blame on the ones who are the lower in the hierarchy. But of course, there are certain groups who are doing excellent work. We've heard of the Sikh communities, which is doing very good work. We've heard of certain NGOs which are doing so much work for providing food, etc. to these people, shelter also, and of course the transport also. There are certain people who are providing transport for them to go home. So what is important is that we have to stop ostracizing people because they are suffering from this, and build stronger ties among communities. We can do this by supporting, managing our well-being. How can we manage ourselves? We create a new routine. I've got some message telling me that time is getting over. Okay. Okay. I'll end here so that I can join you again after a little bit of a break, because we'll have to redo this Instagram what I handle, right? Yeah. The live program. So we'll be back in just about 2-3 minutes, I think.